This is a $99 pancake-styled lens from Viltrox, and it is the smallest full-frame Sony lens that I own. It's got autofocus, and it's available for Sony E-mount and Fuji X-mount. But the question is it any good? Quick disclosure, this video is not sponsored by Viltrox. They didn't send me this lens to review. As a matter of fact, I found it on Amazon about a month ago and saw that it was only $99, so I just had to cop. So there's the context. Now let's look at some sample photos and videos.
Doing a little lens review with Trotti.
Hey everyone!
Right now we've got the Viltrox 28mm f4.5 pancake lens.
This is tiny!
Yeah, that's right. And
wow.
I want you to give me a review of this lens, but only in selfie mode. So you can like examine it however you like, take a look at the image quality.
Okay,
that's
so
all you get.
cool. Okay, you know, first of all, it's a very small and lightweight lens, so you're definitely going to be able to vlog on this. It's giving sort of like retro camcorder vibes, which is like really in right now. I love it. And like it's blue hour too, so that really works.
I think we're getting yelled at.
Shout out to Julia for that fun cameo. We ran into each other at WPPI 2025 and it was so surreal. I've been watching her videos for years now and she is an absolute beast when it comes to natural light portrait photography, and there's so much to learn from her content. Check out her videos if you somehow haven't already. All right, and now on to my review of the Viltrox 28mm f4.5 lens. First off, we obviously need to talk about how cool the design of this lens is. It is absolutely tiny, about the size of two lens caps stacked on top of each other, and it's super lightweight. It features a 28mm focal length lens with a fixed aperture of f4.5. And I'm saying fixed because you can't open this any wider or stop it down at all. There's also no manual focus ring, and focus is controlled purely through autofocus. On the front of the lens, you'll see a nice little lever that controls the lens cover feature, which is super neat to keep your lens element protected and dust free. On the back of the lens, you won't find any weather sealing gaskets, which is kind of expected for a lens this cheap, but you will surprisingly find a USB-C port for firmware updates from Viltrox to improve performance and compatibility over time. And that's really it. It's a pretty straightforward lens. All right, so let's move on to image quality. Let's start off with our test chart photo. When I reviewed this shot on my computer, I was genuinely pretty surprised with how well this lens performed. Center sharpness is pretty solid, somewhere in the ballpark of a 7 out of 10 in my books, while corner sharpness is a little softer, as expected, closer to a 5 out of 10 for me. Now, I wasn't too surprised about the sharpness performance since it is an f4.5 lens, and most lenses, once closed down to somewhere around f4, f5.6, becomes pretty sharp. But again, for a $99 lens, it is way better than I expected it to be. Moving on to artifacts from this lens, it continues to surprise me. First of all, the chromatic aberration on this lens is pretty well controlled and doesn't really show up much at all in both my test photos and in real life sample photos. Vignetting and distortion control also perform above expectation, with some minor loss of light happening in the corners, but not much. And lines throughout the frame are quite straight out of the camera and require very little correction. Now, let's talk about the really interesting feature of this lens: autofocus. At the end of the day, this lens reminds me of something like the Dispo lenses or other lens cap-like lenses that are extremely compact, fixed field of view, fixed aperture, but this one offers the added benefit of autofocus somehow in this tiny little design, making it a lot more usable as an everyday lens or travel lens compared to those other lenses I mentioned, which really feel like more of a gimmick than a real tool. And when it comes to autofocus, I've got good news and I've got bad news. For photos, the autofocus is pretty solid. Really, it's going to come down to how good the autofocus is in your camera. And when testing it with a camera like the A7C Mark II, it worked like a charm, being able to lock on a focus and sticking on a subject. For videos, this is where you'll see the shortcomings of this lens's autofocus. Even though it uses a fast and silent VCM autofocus motor, you'll see that it's not really a smooth focus pulling system, with the focus pulsing and jumping to reach its next focus point if it's tracking something that's moving towards or away from the camera quickly. The lens's close focus performance is also alright, letting you get a minimum focus distance of about 1 foot. And you probably noticed already that the focus breathing on this lens isn't that well suppressed either, with pretty dramatic focus breathing from medium to close focus and back. At the end of the day, the autofocus performance is good enough for casual content like capturing memories, vloggings, or social media content, and for a $99 lens, I think that's enough. Lens flares on this lens are pretty intense as well. In most shooting scenarios, this didn't really affect my footage, but as you can see, if you do end up getting a really bright light source shining at the lens, it pretty much does very little to suppress it. Shining a flashlight at the lens basically just blows out the image. One thing I found out doing this test is that this lens creates a really cool 8-point starburst flare. But overall, in real world uses, for the most part, as long as you're not shooting like into a sunset, you should be good. But honestly, the fact that the lens does kind of wash out kind of adds to that vintage aesthetics of the photos and videos it captures. If you're interested in checking out this lens, I'll have links in the description down below. So here are my thoughts on this little lens. It has been living on my A7C Mark II. Specifically, it's basically replaced my body cap for my camera. So I'll just leave it on there. I'll have that little lens cover closed and I'll just throw it in my gear bag. And if I need another lens, I'll take it off like as if it was a body cap to put on a different lens. It really does have some decent image quality. When you have enough light, like shooting during the day, you can get some really good shots. And of course, it starts falling apart a little when you're shooting in low light, but that's just because it's an f4.5 lens, so you're not getting that much light into your camera in the first place. But throw in the fact that this lens also has autofocus, and it makes this a really, really interesting lens. And when you price it at $99, I mean, as you can tell, I had to buy it, and honestly, I have not regretted that decision at all, because for $99, this is a really, really fun lens at the very least. If I'm like going out to dinner with some friends, I'm not really keen to pack a big lens, but I am willing to bring a small combo like the A7C Mark II and this Viltrox 28mm f4.5. So to answer the question of is this lens any good, I'm gonna have to say yes. For $99, this has been a fantastic purchase, and I honestly recommend it to anybody who's looking for a fun budget lens that can still produce some really good photos. But overall, if you just kind of want the aesthetics of this fun little lens style, I highly recommend it. But let me know what you guys think of this lens in the comment section down below. All right, that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more camera gear content from me, make sure to get subscribed. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Peace.